Hi, welcome to LitFest 2022. My name is Julia Marquez Upman. I'm an intern here at Lighthouse, and I wanted to welcome you all to tonight's happy hour reading featuring book project participants. Welcome. So just a couple of quick announcements before we get to our reading. First of all, for folks watching online, there are links to future happy hour readings in the chat. There are also links to other free events happening tonight, which of course everyone here is welcome to attend as well. We have our visiting author reading and conversation featuring Dean Bacopoulos, Victoria Chang, Ed Hirsch, and Melissa Phoebos. That kicks off at 6 p.m. And then after that, we have a LitFest at Night reading featuring LitFest faculty. That will start at 7:30. So if you are thirsty, help yourself to a refreshment from the bar in the back. It is happy hour after all. And if you're hungry, please see the info booth. There are still tickets available for catered dinner tonight. Finally, if you are looking for classes or workshops that still have space left, please see the info booth or ask a staff member for a link to our cheat sheet, which has a list of everything that still has space available for you. And finally, just a couple of thank yous. I'd like to thank the SCFD, National Endowment for the Arts, and Colorado Creative Industries for helping to make LitFest 2022 possible, in addition to York Street Yards for the generous use of this wonderful space. And a special thank you, of course, to Shop at Matter, our book-selling partners this year. Yes. All right, I'm going to hand it over to tonight's moderator, Bill Henderson. Please join me in welcoming him.
Hello. Is this working? Earlier, we had the brown bag lunch panel thingy, and we didn't get around to covering Flag Day. So I'm going to see if I can fit it in tonight after the reading. We're here for graduating members of, there she is, there's Kate. I was wondering where she was. Graduating members of the book project, which if you're not familiar with the book project, I'm the director of the book project, so you can find me and I will answer your questions. And tonight it's people from my cohort and people from Wahini's cohort. There's Wahini over there. And just in as briefly as possible, the book project is sort of our like MFA program. It's a 2-year program of people writing book-length manuscripts. So novels, books of short stories, memoir, straight nonfiction, essays. Check it out. It's very popular. Sorry, Mike, can you not hear me, Mike? Hello? Okay. Oh, that's much better. Even I can tell that's better. Everyone looked sort of blank while I was talking before. So our readers tonight are Kate Tonneson, who just found us, Barbara McLaughlin, Ricka Ronnie, John Lennon, Kendall Lyon, Becca Andrews, and Smimo Stolzoff. Oh, got it. And we'll just go in that order. You can read here at the, whatever that you call this, podium. And I won't come up in between each reader. If you'll tell us your name, that's always useful. Credit card number, that little number on the back. And what group you were in, and maybe just that really brief sentence about what your book is. And then if we lose track of who goes in what order, I'll run back up and get us back on track. So our first reader is Kate Tonneson.
Obviously, Kate Tonneson. I'm in Bill's, or was in Bill's cohort. Closer? Is that better? Kate Tonneson is in Bill's cohort. My book's about some women who build a roadside attraction dedicated to mythological female beasts. Poor Salome was alone again. The only difference between this time and the many times before was that now she had meant to be. She had met the countless lonely bouts of the past with a trick, a deception of leaving, done to see if anyone would follow. And while no one had ever taken the bait, she had kept up the charade of leaving for years. When she was little, her favorite book was called A Baby Sister for Frances. In the story, Frances, a young Pendle-rendered raccoon, became jealous of the attention her new baby sister was getting from her parents. So she packed a blanket with her things and tied it to a broomstick and ran far, far away to a place no one would find her, under the kitchen table. After some minutes, the caring parents noticed and cried audibly about how much they missed their daughter and how they'd wish she'd return. Finally satisfied, Frances jumped out from under the table and finally promised never let her be alone again. The scheme had worked. Salome had put out similar tactics to the test her whole life. Few had ever noticed her overt bids for love by leaving, as it had always been a farce. But this time, she had wanted to run as far from him that had hurt her as she could. Now hiding from her heartache was the only option left. Alone in a camper, deep in the Sonoran desert, the leaving was certain. The night before, thick clouds blew in to the parched land and the air became dense. Leaden drops of heavy water fell from the sky and hit the ground and tin roofs with loud splashes. A slow timpani beat of raindrops touched the brown basalt gravel and turned into a snare roll as the whole desert was coated in a sweet deluge, accompanied by the sound of a celestial marching band. The people roused and opened their windows. They stepped outside to let the drops of rain spatter against their skin. Then once more they laid in bed, enjoying a drowsy meditation that only rain can bring. By late morning, the torrent had slowed to a steady money beat, ba-dum-bum-ching, ba-dum-bum-ching, but the air was still soft and moist, and the sky lined itself in a thick gray blanket that let the whole desert dream a little longer. Salome's bare foot dropped from the floating step of her old travel trailer onto the wet ground. It felt cold as she walked to a nearby puddle and sat down in it, while the sky offered a weak shower to wet her hair. The air was scented with petrichor and water, and she hadn't seen rain for months and intended to soak it all up. She had run her truck all the way from Vermont to Arizona until her tires were bald and her radiator steamed. At every stop, she saw a shadow like a ghost in the rearview mirror. The frozen rain and the wet of the Northeast and his emptiness had followed her all the way to the Great Divide. Even in the vast wastelands of the plains, she saw him peering at her from winter wheat fields where there was no place to hide in the empty expanses. When she hit the Rocky Mountains, she turned south. New Mexico was incandescent, but filled with too many ghosts of its own. She had driven up beyond the last pass that divided the east from the west and followed it down into the desert. She would have made it to the Pacific coast, but coast people need water to survive, and Arizona had nearly none. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Can you guys hear? Okay, good. Just checking. I wasn't going to do this, but now I guess I am doing it. Barbara.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? All right, here we go. I'm Barbara McLaughlin, and I'm reading tonight from my upmarket women's fiction novel, and it's about an abandoned empty nester who starts a camp for middle-aged women to jumpstart their youthful moxie and teach them tech skills to keep them out of the pasture. So, and this is a scene where the 60-year-old main character has fallen from a Colorado 14er and is injured and is trying to make her way down. So, here we go. The denser the woods grew, the clearer it became. She was lost and possibly hiking in circles. She trudged through a patch of ferns, prehistoric in the moist, dark ground. Movement, something large, a deer perhaps. She slowed. A bear ambled out of the thicket. She froze and watched the ripple of its fur, the power of its shoulders as it stopped, sniffed, and turned toward her. Its claws were long, like stained wooden dentures, evenly spaced and canine. Was she supposed to look it in the eye, get big, throw rocks? Or was that what you did with a mountain lion? The few bears she'd seen had left her alone. She thought her spray would cover the rest, but it was lost, along with her backpack, knot on her belt as the package suggested. She forced her eyes to the edges of their socket, scanning for other bears. This one looked young. Did teen bears travel solo, or only idiots like her? She backed toward a thick-trunked ponderosa to hide behind, maybe climb. The rough red bark smelled like butterscotch, or were those the honey chews in her pocket? Her body hummed. The bear came closer and sniffed the first tree. She inched herself back toward a thicker pine. The river roared in her head, or maybe a vessel had burst. When she peeked again, the bear was lifting its nose, reading her vulnerability. It took its time approaching, stopping at a log, fern, juniper, snuffling deep into the roots that ran toward her. There were no lower branches to climb. She clung to the trunk, squeezing hard to keep her body from crashing into the bark like a woodpecker. Oddly, the tree hugged back, its strength and pliability just beneath its rough exterior. The pawing and rustling grew louder. The bear sniffed her hip. The back of its neck held a spectrum of color, bronze at the base, deep purple toward the shiny bristles. Snout hairs brushed the side of her thigh, still seeping blood. Next would be the hot, rough tongue, the bruising clench of jaw, the snap of bone. Out of her body, hovering above, she watched her fingers ease into the pocket of her hiking shorts, retrieve the packet and toss it. The bear pricked its ears and gobbled the chews, paper and all, then pressed its nose back into her shorts. She'd heard about food-conditioned bears, used to human sustenance, aggressive if denied. Moist breath moved down her hamstrings and calves, back to the soil where the chews had fallen. Rasping nostrils goosed her from behind as though she were a trash can lid. She tightened her choke on the tree. "Go away," she said. The bear startled, dodged, and bounded up the hill. She dared not move until the grunting and rustling stopped for good. Relief oozed through her rigid muscles. It had been so simple. She'd voiced a warning, and the bear had listened. She backed away from the tree. Bark was everywhere, indented in her skin. She brushed away the sharp wooden flecks and picked at the ones embedded in her open flesh. If she'd spoken up earlier, she could have saved some adrenaline for the next catastrophe. But the sap that clung to her belied a deeper truth. Fate was fluid. The slightest turn, a drastically different outcome. Fueled by a primitive stream that banked on luck, she shook as she dodged dead timber, carving a wide berth toward the sound of the river, carrying the weight of her life like a bag of precious bones she'd just unearthed.
Thank you, Barb. That's beautiful. Ricka Ronnie. There you are.
Hi there. I apologize, I have to read from a computer. I do not have access to a printer right now, unfortunately. So my name is Ricka, and I am gonna read from a short story that I'm writing, actually. The narrator is a young man whose father has just passed away, and his father's passing has reminded him, his conjured memories of his late brother. My eldest brother was named Rajendra, actually, but we called him Raj. Now that Baba is gone, God rest his soul, I have not been able to stop thinking of him. Raj, that is, not Baba. Baba never spoke of Raj. Only once, afterward, I saw my father's eyes glisten. He was not crying, not quite, but there was a moistness, a softening. I remember because it was the first time I saw him succumb, however slightly, to his emotions. My father detested feelings. They made a man irrational, and for Baba there was nothing worse. On my 7th birthday, he brought home a large square package the size of a carom board. It was, to my great disappointment, not a carom board at all, but a framed poster of Charles Darwin's early sketch of the evolutionary tree. Just above it, Darwin had written the words, "I think." If a picture can capture the essence of a man, Darwin's sketch captured my father's. Not only had the father of evolution captured the origin of mankind, he had the good sense to acknowledge the possibility that he may have gotten it all wrong. Such intellect, such humility. Baba had no patience for superstition or ritual. He forbade the local pundit from shaving our heads as toddlers, the sacred rite that would have rid my brothers and I of any character deficiencies from past lives that we had carried with us into the womb. Our spiritual ablution thus deprived, our bad karma hung like an albatross around our necks. There were no slips of the tongue or innocent eye rolls for the Sharma boys. Our every foible or mishap was evidence of a personality disorder that, but for a few cleansing swipes of a razor's blade, could have been prevented. Baba wasn't an atheist, exactly. He read the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Tripura Rahasya, but he also read Rousseau and Nietzsche. For him, the gods were but manifestations of the planets and stars, of fire and water, of north and south, of east and west. But this kind of cosmic Hinduism, Baba complained, was too ephemeral, too unsatisfying for most men who needed something tangible upon which to lay their hopes and dreams and 100-rupee notes. Even the gods accept bribes here, he would muse. But what of your brother, you are surely wondering. You said you could not stop thinking of your brother, and here you have droned on about your father. But you must trust me. To understand what happened with Raj, you must first know Baba. What else can I tell you of my father? His favorite pronoun was one. One must never act fraudulently. One's character is the noblest of all possessions. If one can bear to hear the truth, one has spoken. This had the effect of imbuing in his every utterance the timbre of proclamation. My brothers and I, we never knew for whom these grandiose pronouncements were intended. One is an abstraction, the most detached and distant of pronouns. It can be everyone. It can be no one. Aligarh, where we lived, was a city teeming with swindlers and gundas, men who would hustle alms from a priest to pay a whore. My father fit uncomfortably among these men, he a reminder of their own profligacy, they an affront to his sense of propriety and decency. Adorned in bell-bottoms, elaborately patterned shirts, and gold watches underwritten with laborers' wages, they would quietly mock Baba's ill-fitting salwar and stodgy top hat, wrapped in plastic, lest it rain.
You guys are great. Hello? Is John available? Okay. Next, we'll circle back. Kendall Lyon.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kendall Lyon, and I'm writing a memoir called Into the Bitterroots about the effect that a stalker had on my family when I was growing up. I have migrated home on the anniversary of my mother's death, looking for her where the bitterroots bloom, though the wind carried her ashes across the 5 valleys and the rain washed her into the soil. From where I sit on Elk Ridge, the slope falls away beneath my feet. Grass like brushed corduroy, ponderosa pines stand sentinel below. The broad valley opens before me, and in the distance, Lolo Peak and the Bitterroot Range, cloaked in shades of lavender and violet, mountain and forest for miles. I talk to the wind, tell her that I am breaking our silence, telling the story she kept from me for most of my life. I tell her that I am no longer afraid. This is nearly true. 2 men pedal up the fire road, steady on the climb. Nothing about them suggests they intend to do me harm, but I keep peripheral watch on their movement all the same. Fear tangles the morning, charges the air with electricity. This is how it is. This is how a predator I don't remember colors my world, the landscape of defense embedded in my cells. He called it his little game. That my mother had married and had a child did not deter him. That she had changed her name, moved, and hidden her address did not stop him. He tracked, trailed, hunted her for years, and then she disappeared. He would commit a felony to find her again. Watchful as a sharp-shinned hawk, she kept one eye on the man's back as he retreated down the hallway. First door on the right, she offered. The light switch is next to the mirror. Stealing a side glance at the 2 handguns he'd left on the kitchen table, she waited for him to turn the corner. Long-limbed and lanky, one hand on the edge of the door, he looked back, his face obscured in shadow. For hours, she'd planned her escape. Timing was everything, but quick as water, I slid from the high chair and trailed after him, dragging my blanket along the floor. Kendall, come back to mommy, honey. Let the nice man have some privacy. Looking over my shoulder, teasing, laughing, I ran from her down the hallway toward the stalker. He paused, seemed to wait for me, then turned, his sleeve last to disappear around the corner. The door closed with a soft click, and she lunged, bruising my ribs as she carried me, stumbling, screaming out the back door and across the brittle grass. There was the sound of breaking glass, the barrel of a rifle through a window, and it was over. But it wasn't over. My mother's screams tore the air, and she collapsed to the ground. It was just the beginning.
Thank you, Kendall. These are gorgeous. John Lennon is now available, so he'll be joining us over Zoom.
Hello, John. Can you hear us? Hello? Matthew, can you hear us?
Hello?
Hi, is that John? Hello?
Yeah, John, it's really hard to hear.
1 second. We'll try to get that volume louder for you.
Yeah, so I'm texting the team. You gotta know how to like call. That's what we have to like. You have to like ask Devin how to do this. Like that's why I asked you to like. This is gonna be. No, yeah, I mean there's a certain way to do it. Yeah, we're on the call. I think people can hear us, I'm assuming.
We can hear you. Please feel free to share your piece whenever you are ready.
Text the Rahini?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I guess they're saying you can read, John.
What's that?
They're saying you can read now.
Oh.
No, we can't really hear anyone. But yeah, I guess whenever you're ready.
Hello. All right. I guess I'll start reading then. Hello, everyone. Sullivan's two-story beige cell blocks held about 450 men, many of which had special needs, serious mental illness, hearing impairment, blindness. The others were gang members who racked up too many beefs in the bigger prisons over the years. Then there were the high-profile prisoners, Ronnie DeFeo, who killed 6 members of his family in Amityville, Long Island in 1974, and who had been the subject of a generation of cult films called Sullivan Home. Until he transferred out to Shawangunk in 2017, Sullivan, for many years, was home to David Berkowitz, or the son of Sam, who killed 6 people with a .44 caliber, terrorizing New York City in 1977, the year I was born. The good thing about prisons with small populations is that they process your arrival quickly. The nurse took my temperature, cleared me for COVID. Then I was escorted to D North, a 2-tiered cell block in an octagonal shape. Gray walls and orange banisters racked a common area with tables, TVs, 4 phones, kiosks for JPay tablets. Prison-issued electronics that allow us to send and receive emails, pictures, videos, download music, all for a fee. Midget stood outside, Mikey Meatballs' cell. I was with Midget, or Frank Seppi, years ago in Clinton. 9 days after he turned 17, he and his brother shot up a pagan biker clubhouse in Long Island, killing 2 members. They each received 50 years to life. His brother hanged himself soon after. Midget, in his late 50s, now had over 40 years in, a ticker implanted in his chest to help his heart keep beating, and a raspy voice that sounded like throat cancer. Okay. I think that's it for now. Yeah. Sorry. The officers asked me to get off, so I think that's it for now.
Thank you, John.
Sorry, guys. Okay.
We're having difficulty connecting with John. He's currently incarcerated, so we're looking for a window of time. That explains some of the technical issues. Thank you, John. Our next reader is Becca Andrews.
I always have to do that. Hey, y'all. I'm Becca. I'm reading from my forthcoming debut out in October titled No Choice. In Tuscaloosa, Alabama, the West Alabama Women's Center is among a cluster of nondescript businesses that circle a moat of steaming asphalt. The faded brick brown building is set back, tucked away from the main road, wedged between a crisis pregnancy center and an insurance office. The clinic first opened in 1993, and the building gives off a sort of weary air. I'm still here. For now, the weathered white poles across the parking lot from the clinic stand ready, but alone. There are no protesters pressing against them today, flailing and shouting to catch the attention of patients. The air is sticky with the rain that never fell, but still might. A rusted iron bench waits under the awning that shelters the concrete walkway leading up to the steel doors. Hazy fluorescent light leaks out from foggy reinforced windows. Inside, past the receptionist desk, in the last room on the left, down a hallway lined with exam rooms, a black woman who wants a baby sits in a plastic chair, back straight, legs crossed. Tamika has high cheekbones, a glowing complexion, and wide, expressive eyes framed by feathery eyelashes. She's dressed comfortably for her appointment in a black mask, black leggings, a black V-neck, and stylish burgundy Nikes. The initial shock of her circumstances has faded, but still, it seems like some sort of cruel joke that this woman who wants to be a mother so badly is getting abortion care. It's 2021, in the final shimmery summer days of August. Hurricane Ida bore down on the Gulf Coast, causing flooding and torrential downpour in Alabama, though everyone is aware that it's much worse to the south, closer to the water. Rumors of 2 full hospitals facing evacuation and nurses that manually pump ventilators to keep patients alive through power outages have been drifting up from Louisiana. The pandemic has crescendoed into another wave with the Delta variant, and people are beginning to realize that vaccines won't mean a total return to normal, in part because the basic premise of inoculation against dangerous viruses has become politicized to such a degree that large swaths of the population have refused them. An air of dread mingled with the sweaty humidity. Tamika's employment ended in April 2021, a little over a year after the pandemic began, and she's been without insurance ever since, complicating her ability to access birth control. She wants to be a mother on her own terms, and when she feels she can provide a stable life for her child. And this chapter, in which her income is sporadic, she's uninsured, and the world is facing a pandemic that seems to be unending, isn't it? It's hard enough to have a baby when you're financially stable and fully insured. When you don't have that, that's a whole nother level of stress, she says. And not only stress, it's a whole different ballgame when you're poor, Black, and pregnant, especially in the South. A decade of misdiagnosis had passed before an OBGYN an hour away in Birmingham had finally told Tamika that she had fibroids, and the lost time had decimated her egg count. Before the pandemic, she had been seeing a fertility specialist to explore her options. The visit had been expensive on its own, but when the doctor told her how much it would cost to freeze her eggs, her jaw dropped. The number has remained with her, $28,000. Money is tight for everybody, she says. I don't know anybody who has an extra $28,000 laying around, so it was something I had to just put off. I couldn't afford it.
Thank you so much. Our next reader, Smimo Stolzoff.
Hey y'all, I'm Smimo. I'm reading from my forthcoming journalistic nonfiction book called The Good Enough Job, which will be out next spring. Starting in the middle of a chapter, what you need to know is that Lena, the protagonist, has started a company with a celebrity chef, and they've decided to split ownership of the company 50-50. Lena finally left Cup for Cup in 2016 after expanding it from an idea into a profitable multi-million-dollar business. At first, the transition was rough. I was left with this gaping hole in my identity, she told me. I didn't know who I was without this job. She was so depleted that she felt physically incapable of doing anything else. But it was during that period of not working in 2016 that Lena inadvertently started to build back her sense of self. She spent 6 weeks traveling alone in Thailand, a place where no one saw her as Thomas Keller's right-hand woman. When she returned to the Bay Area, she began to nurture some of the hobbies she had brushed aside for the 7 years she had built the business. She went on weekend camping trips in the Northern California redwoods and weekday surf trips to Santa Cruz. She taught herself how to skateboard and rediscovered the joy of cooking for pleasure. I was able to develop myself in different ways, she told me, because I had the space to. She was not just a worker. She was a skateboarder and a notebook sketcher, a community builder and a 30-year-old prankster. She loved to kidnap her friends and bring them to secret locations around San Francisco, go rock climbing in Halloween costumes, and show her housemates how to soak rice paper before wrapping their own spring rolls. She was slowly freeing herself from thoughts of Cup for Cup and the desire for Thomas's validation. But a phone call from her accountant put her healing on pause. Lena's accountant was reviewing her tax recordings, including her K-1, an IRS form for business partnerships. The form says that you have 0% ownership of Cup for Cup he told her on the phone. It looks like Thomas zeroed you out. Lena thought there had to have been a mistake. Thomas went out of his way in interviews to make it clear that Cup for Cup was Lena's idea. She had spent 7 years of her life, almost her entire 20s, building the company from the ground up. She had owned 50% of it from the start. Standing on a windy train platform on the south side of San Francisco, Lena called Thomas. Could there have been a mistake on the K1? She asked him. No, he responded calmly. You left, and we had to refinance things. Why is this the first time I'm hearing about this? I'm sorry, Lena. It's just business. For their entire working relationship, though, this had been about so much more than business for Lena. Thomas had been her first mentor, the first father figure she looked up to. Even when they disagreed, she always spoke to him respectfully, as a line cook might to their chef de cuisine. But those 3 words, it's just business, shattered her image of the man whom she'd spent her entire career idolizing, the man whose Michelin stars hung from the range hoods of his kitchens, the man who she thought she could rely on unconditionally. It was like family until it wasn't. Thomas, the one thing you should know about me is that I won't go down easy, she said, with the same determination she felt in her dorm room a decade earlier. Is that a threat? He asked. No, it's just something you should know about me. That was the last conversation they had before they saw each other in court.
You just have to buy the book to find out how it works out. And our final reader, coming to us from the distant past, she's going to tell us where she's been, is Megan Rich.
So I technically graduated from the book project in 2019, but I was unable to attend Lit Fest that year because I gave birth to my daughter in June of 2019. And they have graciously allowed me to read today when we're back in person. So thank you, Bill. I worked with Eleanor, if anybody cares. What I'm reading from is actually more recent work, something I've written in the last few months, and it is the opening to a personal essay about my abortion in Japan. When the clinician inserted the tent of seaweed into my cervix, a tiny stab to one of the most sensitive passages of the human body, it caused an involuntary jerk and gasp. She firmly pressed one knee with her free hand, saying, "Deep breath." Exiting, I nodded, a slight bow to answer hers, and acknowledged every woman in the lobby with wide eyes, the pinch and burn needling with each step. Several hours to wait before the procedure, I lay on a lichen-covered bench in a nearby garden, looking up into the trees, my mind emptied and my heart void. When the lines appeared, there'd been a moment of joy before the dread set in. With the kind of whim that led me through my 20s, I almost thought, let's do it. I let us have that moment, tried not to rush to any conclusions, then recoiled to the couch, breaking into a sob. As my husband turned away, my heart was already grieving the child I knew I wouldn't have, my mind dismantling any argument he might pose. I could list now all the things we decided, every justification. I could try to make it right in the eyes of anyone who feels they know what would have been best for me, but would it really matter? The next day, I searched the internet for a doctor who spoke English. Not knowing how to make an appointment, I just took the train there and walked in. A nurse led me into an examination room and handed me a robe. Embarrassed by the fact that it was too small for my Western body, she bowed profusely, then exited. When the doctor arrived, she echoed the same phrase I'd heard everywhere, "Sumimasen," what seemed an apology for existing. Eyes downcast as she found the precise English words, she explained this would be my confirmation appointment, and that if I would like to, I could continue to see her throughout my pregnancy. There was an excitement in her voice, one I wondered if she had for all her patients, or if perhaps mine would have been her first American baby. She motioned me into the stirrups, then squeezed gel onto a transvaginal wand and inserted it. Shifting to get the angle in which she could catch the tiny embryo, she finally said, "Here it is." Before I could look away, she turned the screen toward me, a white bubble on a shifting black background, what so many wanted to see, but exactly what I didn't. "What do you think?" she asked, smiling. I told her I already knew I wanted an abortion. Her smile vanished, and she pointed at the embryo. See, she said, "it is your baby," as if I didn't understand. "We've already decided," I repeated, because she didn't. Medical abortions are not legal in Japan, so I'd have to wait until a surgical option would be viable, a minimum, she told me, of 3 more weeks. Before she left the room, she stood next to the examination table, her fingertips gently brushing against my arm. "Go home," she said, looking down. "Talk to your husband. It is a healthy baby."
Thank you, Megan. So glad you had a chance to come back. These are just some of the people who've gone through the book project, and you can hear the quality of the writing is amazing. Everyone has made a leap of one kind or another, and it's really a beautiful experience, something to covet. They've all found their own ideas, their own voices, and they're on their way to getting their books published, or some are already being published. John Lennon's, right, also? Yeah. We're going to end it here, and we'll all be circulating around because it's supposed to be happy hour. And one more round of applause for our readers. Thank you.